led the New York Drug Enforcement Task Force, the largest and oldest drug task force. My father was in charge of the task force for 11 years. I love police and I love the sheriffs in Arizona, Texas, all along the border, because not only do they protect us all, but they stand up and they fight these politicians, right? But my best job was, before I retired, I was the head of the Special Operations Division for 10 years. When I got there were 9 agencies. When I left, there were 30. And we were there to synchronize efforts, and I even brought NYPD into the element. So, what I'm going to talk about today is going to complement what's already been talked about. So, I'm going to focus on the drugs, because we heard about the border issues. Everyone knows the drug issues, but I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit. So, obviously, thank you, FAIR, for inviting me. But in regards to the drug issue, let's make it really clear. The cartels and their relationship with China is the biggest threat to this country right now. And nobody wants to talk about China. That's another thing. So let's focus on the threat. Let's wake up the mainstream media, because they're burying the story, okay? And so the focus is a little stat. 9/11, 3,000 dead, roughly. The Iraq and Afghani war, which, by the way, my brother came back in a body bag, okay? So I know what that's like to all the families. 10,000 total in those 3 issues. 92,000, because I checked the CDC numbers. It's such a pain in the ass to get accurate numbers, because the way they report is a train wreck, okay? But 92,000 dead. That's 11% died in those 3 conflicts compared to 1 year from the drugs alone. Let's talk about my little role. So I did a speech down in Florida. I met a guy named Phil Comby. His sister, Lisa Dean, lives in Connecticut, and she wanted me to meet Lisa. When I talked to her, I was in tears because her 23-year-old son, Joseph Dean, died of fentanyl overdose, and Lisa has to put billboards up in Connecticut because the state doesn't do anything. She forms a nonprofit. She gets the billboards going to get everyone to know. And then, of course, I got to meet my friends from Las Vegas, Voices of Fentanyl, April and Virginia, because they've all lost their kids from fentanyl. So I started this thing where I was going to support the families, because I got a voice in the national media, I got a voice with Congress, so I'm not going to let these people sit back and bullshit everyone, right? So bottom line is, I started digging into this. I started reading the stories. Every story is a tragedy. This guy's with his little daughter, right? And his mother's writing this on the group post, right? Facebook. I called 911, the woman told me to start CPR, the guy was dead. Right? And that's the little girl now has to live without a father, right? Fentanyl. Hold on a second, because this stupid system we have set up here doesn't work.
This is happening on Snapchat.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't notice until it was too late. My daughter was on home from college break. She was a student at Arizona State University. And before going to bed, unbeknownst to us, she had reached out to a drug dealer on Snapchat in search of oxycodone. He delivered it to our house, again unbeknownst to us. And my wife found my daughter dead in her bed the next morning.
That's a story happening everywhere. Now, you want to see something sad? I got this note this week. Matt Capilouto. Derek, please take Alex with you to Arizona. She would have been graduating from ASU this year. She was killed by a single counterfeit OxyContin pill that came across our border. Thanks for what you're doing. God bless Matt. This guy, Matt, wants to do a hunger strike by the White House just to get people to pay attention. I told him, no, that's a bad decision. We're going to get their attention one way or another. Anyway, so here's the point. What's the plan to stop the chemical weapons attack against this country and the mass murder? Because that's what it is. The second question is, when are they going to be held accountable? It's everyone in this room, and the sheriffs, and all the good work that we're doing together. We got to hold them accountable. The leaders must be held accountable. You can't take the position of Attorney General or Department of Homeland Security Secretary and not the responsibility. It's not the way it works. And the great families are suffering, so we got to stand up for them. That's my passion. I didn't have to be here. I love the place. It's great. The weather's nice. The hospitality's great. But I wanted to be here for the families. That's what matters to me. And bottom line is, FAIR, if it wasn't for FAIR, I wouldn't have had a chance to come speak. Because FAIR put this together. So thank you. I make these every day in my basement. I have a full-time job. But I put this stuff together myself because I show people, this is what's going on from the cartels. This is what's going on from the poison from Mexico. This is no joke. People are losing their kids every day. And then I look at the statistics. I do this every day to try to get accurate stats. It's like, you can't believe how hard it is. The latest stats, as of November 2020, 12-month period, 92,000 dead. That's 254 a day. There's nothing like it in America, and those stats, thanks to my friend Virginia, Georgetown study, 2016, shows that we're not getting accurate stats from CDC on these fentanyl overdoses. They don't even classify them correctly. They say opioid, right? Okay, let's look further. You look at the coroner's report in Ohio, 85% of fentanyl. What does that tell you? The chemical attack on our country from China, who wants to reduce our population, wants to undermine and destabilize the country, and it's working very well because we're not paying attention. Okay? Now, this is what really pisses me off. The Washington Post did an outstanding story. I participated in it. I know it's authentic. I know it's good. 100 billion opioids got dumped into America by the corporate cartels. And by the way, I lived this nightmare in D.C. They don't get prosecuted because of the high-powered lawyers in Washington and DOJ. They all get jobs in the law firms. But here's the problem. The mass media is still misinforming the public. Oh yeah, doctor overprescribed the kid 50 pills, the kid got addicted and died. No, that was 15, 20 years ago. Does it still happen? Yes. But the poor people that have legitimate pain, she has a back surgery, she can't get a couple of pills. They say, take Tylenol. So the country's whacked out when it comes to that whole thing, and I'm sick and tired of it. That's what's killing the kids. Somebody alluded, a couple of sheriffs alluded to it, and I'm going to get into it in a second. Deadly partnership with the pills. It's Russian roulette. The kids are killing themselves. They have no idea what they're taking. Because you know what? COVID anxiety, social isolation, depression, school, got to get a job, get out of your room and get a job. They pop a Xanax because mom's taking a Xanax, dad's taking Xanax. They don't wake up because it's fentanyl poison, right? You can't treat somebody in the mall. You hear all these people, oh, I'm going to put $50 billion into treatment. I applaud treatment, it's important, but treatment of fentanyl murders is not going to work.
Alexander was 14 years old, had this bright idea that he wanted to try OxyContin, and he reached out to a drug dealer through Snapchat, who sold him what he believed to be a legitimate prescription pill, and it turned out to be illicit fentanyl, and that fentanyl killed 4 people.
4 people.
Alexander
So, these families are getting pissed off, and I'm helping stir the pot, by the way. And I work with Fox and Newsmax, and I tell them to get out there and start reporting on this. Snapchat headquarters. Look at some of these billboards. They're marching out there on the streets just to get somebody to pay attention. And you know what? It's starting to work. But it didn't start with that. These ladies here, April Babcock, she started Lost Voices of Fentanyl. That's her house in Maryland, putting these banners up. Just so the neighbors know, like my kid was a good kid. He was perfectly healthy, but he took a pill and he died. You look at all of these stories. Look at this one here. She's at the kid's grave, Trey. Mother's Day, she's going to see her son, right? You look at this. I lost 3 of my children. 2018, my son Sean. 2020, my son Gary on Christmas night, and my daughter. More kids dying, right? And so, Virginia Krieger, that's her baby. Look how beautiful. And there's Austin Babcock. These families care. And we got to get behind the families because these politicians don't give a shit. They're self-serving. So anyway, they went out in Annapolis. They tried to generate some attention. Poor April had to beg the news media, hey, come out, this is important. They finally did come out, but I'm very proud of the work that they've been doing, so I'm here to help them. The Biden crisis, let's talk about it quickly. This is how I live my life every day. Okay, my brother Mike, who's an Air Force pararescue, he would expect nothing less. If you want to be Department of Homeland Security, you want to be the sheriff, you have a responsibility. Don't bullshit the taxpayers on what's going on. It's not going to work. So we're going to make him feel some heat one way or another. This guy's a clown. And he goes and says, oh, the border's closed. The border's closed? Are you kidding me? Look at the stats. And then Sleepy Joe says, oh, it's a seasonal thing. Seasonal? Look at the numbers. It's not seasonal. It's very obvious what's going on, but they don't want to tell anyone the truth. Right? The border's open. The fences are sitting there. You heard one of the sheriffs, Mark Daniels said, $500 million bill on the taxpayers because they wouldn't finish the damn wall? This clown again. So you know what I say to this clown? Watch. Goodbye. He's got to be removed. And it's only going to be removed if people start raising hell. So let's take a look at what we're trying to do. We need a leader who's going to secure the border. Establish law and order, be honest with the Americans, and support the sheriffs and the brave men and women on the front lines. That's critical. Complete the wall, reinstate the migrant protection protocols, end catch and release, keep Title 42 active, and here's my thing. Keep the bugs, the dogs, and the drugs out of America.
Yes.
So we all know what we got going, right? We know we have a whole mess here. It's not a drug crisis. It's not an opioid crisis. It's a national security. I stole a quote from the sheriff and basically said every sheriff in the country is a border sheriff. It's true. You know why it's true? Because we're all in this together, and police are fighting this every day, all throughout the country. Look at the violent crime, escalating everywhere. Drugs are fueling a lot of the violent crime. The gangs, the activity in the cities, right? Just look at the stats. But then you gotta look at the cartels. They are emerging as more powerful than armies with the capabilities, the weapons, the drones. They're starting to use explosives in the drones. What about our border patrol? What about the sheriff's guys on the streets? They can kill our people with drones now. And we're sitting there, oh, no big deal. No big deal. Sleepy Joe's got to figure it out. You look at this. They're killing the cops in front of their parents in Mexico, right? But look at what's happening in our cities. Chapo Guzman, thank God he's in jail after capturing him twice. But the twins, the Flores twins, were in Chicago as his cell head, supplying all the gangs in Chicago the dope. And now the Jalisco New Generation Cartel and Sinaloa are fighting. The gangs are going wild. It's drug infested, right? So the drugs are through the roof. You guys already saw the stats, but here's my stat. 1 kilogram can kill 500,000 people. That's 2.2 pounds. 2 milligrams kills a person. That's 4 grains of salt. You have a 306% increase, right? If you look at the first 8 months of last year compared to this year. The pill presses that are not only coming into Mexico, but all over our country. And guess where they're coming from, ladies and gentlemen? China. Many of them are coming from China. I didn't write that on the side of these seized pill presses, okay? And so what does that mean? The pills are going through the roof. And what does that mean? Mass amounts of print media stories. CNN, I want to go on CNN. You think they're pro me? MSNBC, no. Fox and Newsmax, I feel like I'm wasting my time because everyone knows. People hear it all the time. The talking head again. Oh, we don't listen to this guy. He's too loud. He's from New York. He's obnoxious, right? Look at this, every city in the country. So when the Sheriff Wilcox says the sheriff's on the border, it's going to come into your town, it's happening. Just look at the stories, right? This is my buddy up in New Hampshire, DEA guy. He's at a red light. The car stopped. He's beeping. Come on, asshole, move. He pulls up to the car. Overdose, fentanyl, 2 of them. Luckily he was fat and had his foot on the brake and the car wasn't moving. And they put the Narcan, and that's another thing, it's smoke and mirrors. You know how high the stats would be without Narcan? Yep. And people don't even talk about Narcan, right? Look at this chart. One of the other sheriffs talked about his county. I'm going to talk about the DEA just in Phoenix alone. 2015, 0 pills. 2020, 6 million pills. DEA lab, one of the sheriffs had it right, Donahue. 26% of the pills that the DEA lab analyzed were lethal. So with no exaggeration, no embellishment, DEA Phoenix alone saved 1.5 million people from dying. Nobody talks about that stuff, right? The meth is through the roof. Now why? Why is the meth through the roof? Because the Chinese chemical guys are making money like this. This is $207 million from 2007 in Mexico City. This high roller, Zen Li Gan. They seized 207. There must have been 300 million in the house if the Mexicans reported 207 million seized. Look at this car, Rolls Royce. He's a high roller, right? And then you wonder what he's doing. He's not a drug dealer. He's just importing the massive chemicals into Mexico to the super labs. So here's a quick video just to show you this type of lab produces 7 tons of meth in 3 days. Let me repeat that. 7 tons of meth in 3 days. When we were growing up as young agents, if you seize 1 pound of meth, it was a big seizure. Now, you look at these labs, they're in the middle of the jungle, you can't get near them because the cartels control them, and they're very, very, aggressively producing meth. They bring the chemists in from Asia and all over the world, and they make this stuff, and that's why we're seizing this amount of drugs. Take a look at this picture. 1950 in Dallas, 1,100 here, over in, where was that one? I can't see it in my eyes. In Atlanta, then there was 2,200 out in California, 3,100 in California, 2,000 in Atlanta, 1,200 pounds over there at one of the border stations. That's just a snapshot. Do you realize the amount of meth? So yeah, kids are dying not only from the counterfeit pills, but the fentanyl in the other drugs like meth and cocaine. And I don't know about marijuana, but they're reporting that too. So just those 6 seizures alone that I just put up there, 11,000 pounds of meth. Nobody talks about this. Now what they don't talk about is this one, the conversion labs. So these guys with the backpacks that are running across the border and they have like liquid meth and stuff, they bring them to these places all over the United States. They found the first one ever in New York City. But what's happening is, and this is a good one, and I picked up on this because I'm not a lab expert, but one of the DEA experts said 1 pound of meth produces 5 pounds of toxic waste. So there's one lab in Atlanta, 2,000 pounds of toxic waste in America. And by the way, most of the guys that were arrested are illegal from Mexico, and nobody reports on that. I got to do backroom intel gathering just so I can report it, because they're not allowed to say it in the news. Okay? Here's what's been going on. I studied this because 2010, when I was the head of SOD, we started seeing mass amounts of synthetic chemicals coming into America. And then they were selling the synthetic marijuana, K2 and Spice. Many of you know about this, right? And basically, we had a CI go into a lab in China. This was the synthetic lab, right? So this is the statement that I'm going to make, and I've made publicly for about 3 years. Chinese have weaponized America's addiction to drugs and are now attacking the nation under the disguise of drug addiction. Okay? And we're sitting there, no big deal. Sleepy Joe's son's making millions of dollars from Hunter, right? Where's Hunter's laptop? What's the story with that, right? Where's the law and order? And then you start reading in the news a couple of years ago, people were dropping like the night of the living dead in New York, in Chicago, in New Haven, Connecticut, from this compound that was coming from Wuhan-style labs. Nobody even talked about it. And by the way, on a side note, I do a lot of research on this. A lot of the monies from these bodegas and stuff are going back to Yemen to support Hezbollah. That's another whole story for another day. Yeah. Okay, so a couple of things. Close partnership with the Mexican terror cartels, that's what I call them. Supplier of the precursor chemicals for meth and for fentanyl, that's where it's being produced now. They produce the synthetic drugs in these labs. They're massively involved in the production of fentanyl, even though it's gone down a little bit. Here's another one that no one talks about. They are providing the critical money laundering services for the Mexican cartels right now. They don't put the cash in the bank anymore. They give it to Chinese nationals. These kids are picking it up around the country. They collect $500,000. The Chinese business guy on his app sends 500 grand from one bank account in China to another bank account to a buddy over there who orders up 500,000 worth of consumer goods, and then they ship it to South America, Mexico, Panama, and they sell the goods, and everybody wins. We can't even track it in law enforcement because we can't get into the Chinese encrypted apps, right? Terrorist organizations. I know this one because this is where I started building up a lot of momentum in the national news. When Hezbollah, the worst terrorist organization in the world, according to many, was working very closely with the Zetas and the other cartels. How do I know it? Amin Juma was indicted for moving 85,000 kilograms of Los Zetas cocaine money and was doing a money laundering scheme, $200 million a month, to support Hezbollah and their radical agenda. What is it I'm saying that people don't understand? Like, I'm not making this shit up. Like, Admiral Stavridis gave me a fireball slide when I was the brand new head of SOD. He was the Supreme Allied Commander. And he says, Derek, this is my worst nightmare. The Islamic terrorists and the narco-terrorists come together in this big fireball. And I carry that thing all, it's got it on my phone. And when Eric Holder asked me, what keeps you up at night? Why are you yelling? Why are you so crazy? Why am I so crazy? You have any idea what's going on? Wake up. Now, this one is one of my favorite. We're winding down here, but I get excited with this stuff. So, Kamala Harris says the root causes, we're going to go give the money to these people. Does everyone in this room know the following? That the president of Honduras, right here, has a brother. His brother was protecting Chapo Guzman, was convicted and is in jail for 185 tons of cocaine. During Chapo's testimony, Tony Hernandez promised El Chapo that his cocaine shipments through the Central American country would be protected if he was the president. So we're gonna give our money to these corrupt people in Mexico and Central America. And by the way, does everybody know that we arrested the former Secretary of Defense, Cienfuegos? DEA, LA arrested him, and you know what happened? He was sent back to Mexico. You know what AMLO's now putting out in the news? That DEA was fabricating evidence against this guy. No, we got into the corruption at the highest levels of Mexico, and nobody wants to talk about this. We also locked up Genaro Garcia Luna. He was the public safety director. The public has no idea that these people are covering this stuff up. And you see the news, right? Kamala with the visiting the border. I don't even want to get into that. It makes us all sick. And Joe with his Sleepy Joe plan of $4 billion. Just give away the money, no big deal, right? And this one I kind of found was funny, but she went to the border today, but where's Kamala? Everywhere but the border. And then she laughs, right? It's real funny when they said you're going to the border. Real funny, right? And then all of this stuff that came out on BBC News. I have my own theory. In addition to Trump stirring up the pot, which I agree with Brandon, this BBC News story, I would highly recommend you go look at it. It just came out recently, and it showed some of the horror stories at the facilities. And this put a lot of pressure on Sleepy Joe and Kamala, okay? So last couple of slides, you're going to stop the flow of chemicals to the Mexican terror cartels. If you don't have the chemicals, you can't produce the poison. You're going to stop the money flow because we're going to use the best and brightest in the government, from the DOD, the intelligence community, the feds, the state and locals, get the money laundering experts, the treasury experts are going to shut their ability down to do business. And we're not going to be soft, okay? We're going to expose, indict, and capture the Chapo Guzmans of the world, because you have to do that, and you got to extradite them. Mexico, you don't extradite the guy, you're not getting any money. Sorry. You're going to unite the best and brightest, and that stuff I already talked about. And everyone's got to recognize the growing role of China. And the money laundering, they provide two very critical services: the money and the chemicals. If you don't have the money and the chemicals, you can't do the business. That's simple. You're going to hold the greedy corporate cartels responsible. When I was a young agent in DEA, they taught us, you got to work up to the source of supply. Okay, so we identified all the manufacturers and distributors of the 100 billion pills, and the DOJ doesn't prosecute them. How do you, that, you're talking about like mixed messages, right? They're not prosecuted, they get fines. And these big corporations, excuse me ladies, they crap out that money. It doesn't matter, they got so much money, it doesn't matter. This was my idea a couple of years ago. I'm not the only guy that has said this. Chip Roy and others have said this. You got to designate them as terrorists, because that's what they are. They've killed more Americans than any terror organization that I know of, and we don't talk about that. We just want to walk on the political eggshells. Oh, we can't declare them terrorists because we don't want to go to war in Mexico. We're not talking about going to war with Mexico. For those of you who served in the military and understand the intelligence community capabilities, we don't have to go to war. We won't blow those damn labs up. We will take their money, and they won't know what hit them. But you got to have the will. You got to have somebody to give the direction. So that's kind of a letter that was written by the Attorney General. The Governor of Texas, Abbott. It's another thing that he's done. And John Ladd, I hope that's the right picture. I took it from the website. He's not here, but you know, for him to have us down there is kind of cool. Last thing I want to say is August 27th, thanks to the ladies at this table, April, others, they have a rally in front of the Chinese embassy up in D.C., and they're giving out t-shirts because they're going to further expose China's role with the cartels. So we're going to continue to put the pressure on. I'm done.
And here's one of those rhinos right back here.